Chelsea Vowell Nitsigason. Ewa Pita Kosasan Escuela Unia. I'm welcoming you here, Pitikwek, and thanking you for being here. But mostly I'm locating myself, which is a protocol that is shared pretty much across Turtle Island. And it's something that you might want to think about doing yourselves a little bit more. When we come up and introduce ourselves, we always tell you where we're from. I'm from Mantusak-Eiganik, which is Lac St. Anne in Alberta. That's my territory. I'm Métis. We're Cree speaking. We have a lot in common with our Cree cousins. I'm a transplant to Montreal, so I want to thank the Mohawk for having me here on their territory. There has been a history that thankfully has been touched upon already a bit today, but I mean, this is, it's just the beginning. There is so much that Canadians don't know about their own history that will help you to understand where we're at now, okay? And that's something that needs to happen in the wider Canadian public, is that education. So a major goal is education. And as we do that, one of the themes that's going to come out is the fact that what we're looking at is we're all treaty people, okay? And you hear that, people say it, and you're like, yeah, we're all treaty people. What does that mean? Making treaties is one of the ways that many of our peoples have decided to deal with conflict, with strangers, okay, with other people. Before any settlers came here, treaties were used between nations to make agreements and to clarify reciprocal obligations. There was never any take, no give. That doesn't work. When you're dealing with equals, you have to give and take. There are obligations. The treaties are about peaceful coexistence, number one, okay? And I think that gets forgotten a lot. And non-interference. When we were hearing about the two-row wampum, I think it's probably one of the best examples and one of the most clear ways to explain to people exactly what that means. Peaceful coexistence, side by side, not interfering with one another. Okay? We need to get back to that treaty arrangement. And whether we're treaty peoples or not, because I'm speaking from a context, I come from Treaty 6 area, adhesion territory, all right? Those treaties are different than the peace and friendship treaties. Some people that live here don't have treaties with settlers, okay? They had treaty relations with other people who lived around them, but not necessarily with settlers. So don't get hung up on the word treaty and think historical treaty, peace and friendship treaty. Think about what treaty relationship means. It's a living arrangement. It never ends, because relationships don't end, okay? So one of the main goals here is to get a commitment from Canadians and from the Canadian government to go back to that treaty relationship. Personally, I feel that if on January 11th that commitment isn't made, then we haven't achieved any sort of goal. I like to refer people back to the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples that was published in 1996. Okay? I have problems with it. I'm sure lots of people will have problems with it. But it was a document that came out of very intensive consultation after a period of extreme tension between the Canadian state and Indigenous peoples. So what you had here is a 5-volume study. The first volume is all about the history, where the relationship went wrong. The second volume is the one that I'd like you to look at. And it's online. It's available online. It's called Restructuring the Relationship. And it talks about where we go from here. It's a roadmap. And you know what it starts with? That treaty relationship. And then it starts with the land. Because we come back to the land over and over again. That's where we locate ourselves. That's how we identify ourselves as people. That's where we're from. We don't just live there. Our laws come from the land. Our culture comes from the land. Our language comes from the land. Everything comes from the land. And it may be something that you can't quite understand, but I think in your hearts you can, because all people come from the land. Even if your family came here recently, if your family has been here for hundreds of years, you rely on the land. So if you look at the situation of allocation of resources in Canada, it's really dismal when it comes to being an Indigenous person. Well, what is it? Okay. So reserve lands. No, this is a First Nation issue on that, because only First Nations have reserve lands. Métis outside of Alberta have no land base at all. The Inuit have certain lands in the north, out of modern treaties, that sort of thing. But south of the 60th parallel, okay, First Nations occupy 0.5% of all the land in Canada. That's atrocious. That's ridiculous. That is 1/3 of the reserve lands that were originally allocated. And this is something that I think Canadians need to understand. When you're looking at historical injustices, oh, land was taken from them. Yeah, okay, that happened in the past. No, it's still going on. One of the big arguments or criticisms hurled at us is that, you know, we're just living on Canadian taxpayers and not giving anything back. Well, you know, we don't want the band office to be the sole employer. We don't want to have to move all the way to frickin' Montreal to get a job because there's nothing in your community. I love you, Montreal, but I'd rather be home. Okay? So you got to understand that self-sufficiency has always been our goal because it's all how we always lived. Okay? We were never dependent on anybody. This is not what we chose. This is not what we want. And we have plans. We have amazing people in the communities who, with a shoestring budget, put together programs that are just fantastic, okay? And we can thrive and we can get out of the poverty that we've been forced to live with. We do it. We need to recognize those successes. If we're given the chance to deal with our own situation with some resources, okay, we will be successful. We've done it in the past. We'll do it in the future. And that's what we're asking for, okay? So if Canadians want us to stand on our own 2 feet, all right, we need some of the land back. We need some of the resources back. Third issue is capacity building, all right? We've had our capacity stripped and stripped and stripped away until we're hardly functioning. We have to focus so much on the everyday issues that we can't necessarily go long term. When you don't have potable water in your community, when you're getting sick all the time because your home is moldy, okay, when you're so crowded that tuberculosis spreads through your community like wildfire, okay, when your kids can't even go to school because it's freezing and they're sitting there in those portable shacks, okay, you don't have time to worry about drawing up constitutions or bringing your language back. As much as we want to do that, we can't focus on it. We're just trying to survive, okay? So capacity building is going to mean an investment. Yeah, it's going to mean more money. And the thing is that report after report has come out saying that if we continue to do things the way that we are, the funding formulas that are in place are so inefficient and so badly planned out, it's going to cost more in the long term to sit there and just let things do nothing. So let's invest now. Let's invest now. Let's build up the capacity. And go out there with facts. Go out there, do the research, and commit yourselves to what's going to take a long time. 20 years, at least, of working on this to get things any better than they are now. All right? Hi, Mr. Hay. Thanks for listening to me.